welcome back to the Deep Transformation Podcast. And I'm John Dupuy, and Dr. Roger Walsh, my co-host, is on a 2-month retreat right now. And I talked to him the other day, and he was very supportive of what we're doing here, but he can't be here. And I want to introduce, I think this is the third time that we've had this conversation. And of course, we met in Europe and have, we've been connected over the years for various things, and more connected as this whole situation of the invasion of Ukraine developed. And this is Katerina Yasko, and doctor. She's a psychologist, and her noble, beautiful husband is, let me see if Vidas Buchunas. And he, as far as I understand, we're working in the world of banking and finance at a pretty high level, and international stuff. And so these are just, before this happened, they were doing great work, and they've been on it ever since. And those of you who've been listening to this, you know how moved and touched, and how I've been trying to do everything I can support this just absolutely unjustified, blatant, murderous invasion of Ukraine. I've never seen such a black and white situation in my life, and to know it's not because the United States threatened Russia or this or that. That's just apologists for Putin. I don't buy it. I won't get in there. But yeah. So we're here today, and we're here to recognize and commemorate January 24th, the 1-year beginning of the special military operation, or the invasion of Ukraine.
February 24th.
February 24th. I'm sorry, I'm not very linear. Thanks. And so catch us up. Where do you guys want to start, and where do you want to go? And let me say, at the end of this, or somewhere toward the end, there's a song that I recorded called Ukraine, that I just prayed, God, give me a song for this. I hadn't written a protest song or anything in 20 years. And how do you write something that expresses what's going on and can keep in mind what is happening? And I think it beautifully captures this moment in history. So stay tuned for that. And all right, you guys, so catch us up. What do you want us to know? What has your experience been? And I'll ask more questions, but just let's get rolling. God bless you guys. It's really good to see you.
Likewise, John. Good to see you.
And thanks for having us again.
Yeah, it's a pure pleasure. Privilege. And a very small correction. I was a banker for 20 years before, but for the last 6 years, I'm in leadership development. I'm working with top management teams of Ukrainian corporations, and now more engaged with civil leaders and other spheres. So, would you like to start?
Yeah, I would like to start from expressing our deepest gratitude to you and to the iAwake partners and the sponsors of the causes that you have been bringing into this space. And we have received a lot of support, especially during the heaviest months of spring and beginning of summer. So I just want to reiterate how grateful we are for all these efforts, and also to you personally, John and Pam and Roger and your team, for just disseminating the truth, for letting the world know, because it's very interesting and complicated moment in life, in the world history, we believe, and I really liked the way you've put it. There hasn't been so many black and white situations as this one, and we believe this is the way it really is. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed, and thank you for counterfighting these popular narratives that we all know where are they coming from. That it's not that simple, It's not that simple. It's not that black and white. Unfortunately, in some cases, it is. It is either or, and unfortunately, in this war, we don't see any kind of semitones, and it's only about the Ukrainian victory that we should worry about and put all our efforts into. So So updating from the Ukrainian side, as you know, the Ukrainians are fighting like hell, and they're doing great job on the front line. Thanks to the support of all the Western countries, and especially the US, we are deeply grateful. And never have we been more interested in the role of the USA as the world policeman, as they say, as now, and it's extremely important. Of course, there are many people who are saying like, it's all about America, it is starting all the wars and blah blah blah. But unfortunately, it's a very shallow approach, because America doing nothing would create much more mess in many ways globally than really standing for in this case for Ukraine, because what I think is
for a
happening.
free new democracy that's struggling to get its act together in a very noble way. And Zelensky was great. Watch his television show. What's the name of it?
A servant of people.
A servant of the people. I mean, it happened right before, he became president, and it really shows his heart, what he was looking at. And you get a sense of Ukrainians as people and struggling with the corruption and trying to clean things up, and there's massive problems. And it's the weirdest thing to see this man playing the president that just a short time later would actually become a president, and actually become a president in the time of greatest trial. God, Ukraine's been through so much, but one of the greatest trials that the Ukrainian nation has ever been through.
Exactly. And I can tell as a leadership development professional that his unfolding of leadership, his becoming a mature and strong and creative leader is continuing to be a beautiful thing to observe from many angles. It's really beautiful.
Yeah,
his speech his speech at the joint houses of Congress in the U.S. He got on a plane. He has been right on the front line and flew over unannounced, obviously, and got there and just went in with his very simple clothes and delivered a speech that, all these warring parties that just gave him a standing ovation. It was just brilliant, and it's probably the most important speech since Churchill came there at the beginning of World War II, before the U.S. was in the war, and I'd never seen anything like it. And he gave a Ukrainian flag.
That was impressive.
And he was awarded a big American flag, and they wanted to take it away from him. He kept holding it, and he walked out with it. It was just incredibly impressive.
We were almost crying at that moment. Watching.
I was there.
Watching his life. And of course, we are not idealizing Zelensky. He has his weaknesses. Of course, he might be not the best president for peacetime, but for the wartime, we are really lucky to have his stamina, his stance, his backbone, and perseverance, many good qualities. And this is a beautiful kind of unfolding of leadership.
Well, he'll need a break after the victory, and if Definitely. He can hand it over maybe you guys, either one of you would be a good president, I think, actually. But it's been extraordinary, and what I say that in our postmodern society, we've become so cynical, that everybody's the same. It's all this blah blah blah, and so you don't do anything. Well, Ukraine has told us again that the age of heroes did not die. It is alive and well and going on as we speak. It's truly extraordinary, and that there are things worth dying for, and therefore there are things worth living for. So snap out of it and live your life at a deep level that matters and that serves your people and serves the world.
Yes, and this is something I believe Zelensky, coming back shortly to him, has been trying to show that it's the virtues that matter. Like you really need to lead a meaningful life, and the Ukrainian people, with our current horizontal structures of volunteers, and everybody is continuing to support the Ukrainian army, all the entrepreneurs, like we personally, sometimes through the international friends, sometimes not sometimes, but often by our own, on our own, as we continue to believe that there is something extremely meaningful that is emerging, and this deserves support, and this shows and highlights the new kind of, we call it the meta-modern cultural code. Like there is a value of empathy, there is value of being able to stand for the values and to use force in order to protect these values, because we live in an extremely complicated world. Different stages of consciousness interact all the time. And in order to find solutions for this complexity, we need to be prepared. And democracies, they need to have guts in order to be able to act. And I think that this is exactly what is happening at the moment. That slowly but surely, Europe, I mean Western Europe, because there were no problems with that in the Eastern Europe, like in Baltic states have been telling for years to the so-called old Europe, to Germany, France, etc., that it's going to happen, and it's super dangerous to lead this realpolitik game with Putin. And they didn't believe. They tried to appease, they tried to soothe, and to do business with the authoritarian regime and with the crazy autocrat. So now we believe that Europe has awakened, and hopefully states as well. There is also some influence over there that you can feel. That democracy, it needs to be fully ready for a possibly long-term battle for its values. And it may last much longer than after Ukraine wins. Who knows how many battles between democracy and autocracy are ahead.
That's right. There's really worldviews that are clashing right now. It's very important stuff.
And I'd like to emphasize one important aspect that Katya just touched, that what is happening in Ukraine, that it is integrated those two extremely important polarities of love and power, that they're really integrated there. That you know, this postmodern love and peace, and wanting for peace and forgiving everyone, and hugging and you know, approaching each other with flowers and with ayahuasca is not enough. Love is not enough. Rephrasing the Beatles song, you know, all you need is love. Not love is not all we need. We also need power, as it turns. Yeah.
It's not a time of peace. You know, in Ecclesiastes says there's a time for love, there's a time for sowing, there's a time for reaping, there's a time for peace, and there's also a time of war. And in 3 places in the Old Testament, in the prophets, it also says, and people cry, peace, peace, when there is no peace. Doesn't do any good just to wish for peace when it can't.
The more you seek peace, the greater war you get, kind of.
You know, and Roger, he's never told anybody this, but he's been a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner for many years and teacher, and he's also been awarded the title of Lama. And I had heard them speaking to another Buddhist teacher, and I thought, Roger, really? You know, he'll probably not be too happy for saying that, but he told me that, and this is coming from somebody who's been very devoted in other traditions, but very enmeshed in that one. He said when the Chinese invaded Tibet, the Dalai Lama told them to stop fighting. And that led to the slaughter of 2 million Tibetans when they didn't fight. You know, as much as I honor and love that, that was the wrong move with the wrong people at the wrong time. And sometimes you just got to fight. And, you know, we talked on the progressive side of things, it's very hard for Green in the integral sense to wrap its head around fighting, you know, because it's, you know, can't we all be like Gandhi and everything? Well, Gandhi worked because he was dealing with the Brits at a time when they were ready to hear him. Otherwise, it wouldn't have worked. If you tried that with Hitler, the tank would have run right.
Putin,
yeah. So you have to do what you have to do at the right time. Oh, and we talk about the military-industrial complex, which President Eisenhower talked about in his last speech before he stepped down from being president. And it's like, thank God our military-industrial complex works. You know, the weapons that we send actually work, whereas the weapons from Russia that are in this very corrupt, from the top down, stealing, trying to get everything they can of their manufacturing process, function somewhat in a 1960 or 50 tradition, but they don't function very well. And that's, again, it's part of the corruption.
Fortunately.
We're so happy about the Russian corruption.
Yeah, well, that's a big advantage. And so our stuff does work. And, you know, God forbid that we ever had to use it, but now we have to use it. And thank God it's preserving freedom. And I'll just say one more thing. Putin was very clear about his designs. He said that the fall of the Soviet Union was the greatest disaster of the 20th century, like worse than World War I and World War II, but in his mind it was. And he stated over and over again that what he wants to do is reclaim all the countries that were lost when the Soviet Union collapsed. And now all these, you know, free countries, and he's been gobbling up the small countries around him. And then he got away with the invasion of Crimea, and he, you know, brought all his troops in his mind. He has this great army and everything, and then invaded Ukraine, which has no natural boundaries, no natural defenses. It's just flat. There's a few rivers, but there's no mountains or anything. And he was just going to roll in, bam. And Ukrainian people woke up, and there was this battle at the airport where he sent a brigade of the best paratroopers in, and they were going to seize it. And then they were just going to fly in the troops and go in and murder Zelensky and take over, wave the flag, right? Well, they fought back and they couldn't get to the airport. I mean, it was just like, they just, you know, and these were like reserve troops and everything that just came together. And it's one of the most heroic consequential battles in modern history. It's really an extraordinary moment. And what can you say but glory to heroes, right? Which is one of the national greeting in Ukraine is glory to Ukraine and glory to heroes. Of course, it's in Ukrainian. And yeah, the heroes were there, and they won that battle, and that stopped everything in its tracks.
In a way, it's as simple as it is. It's an existential war. It's very important to remember that for Ukraine and Ukrainians, there is no choice. Well, we may say in the postmodern world, we may say that there is always choice. But if we look at it from the perspective that not to search for meaning in life, but to what meanings we want to give our life to, which meanings, which senses do we want to enliven, right? Then it's just, there is no choice. If you want to live in a country where you have freedom, democracy, a right for dignity, right to live your lives, and right for your future generations to be alive, basically just to have the kinship and the hope that we will have grandchildren who will call themselves Ukrainians, then you have to fight back.
Exactly. The same axiom still stands, that if Russia stops fighting, there is no more war. If Ukraine stops fighting, there is no more Ukraine. And that's the fact. There is no peace alternative. Putin indeed seeks for peace at the moment, because he wants to lick his wounds and rebuild his, regain his power and come back with a new level of rage, you know. But there's no alternative in like breaking up and then living peacefully. No, it does not exist even theoretically.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the only thing he could do is just get the hell out of all this country, all this that he's tried to annex and steal and conquer, to include Crimea. And, you know, but it doesn't seem that he in his psyche, he can do that. And he keeps calling up more and more Russians to fight. And they are going into combat with AK-47s left over from, you know, 1960, very little food, very little ammo, almost no training, and they're just forcing in what the Russian soldiers call the meat grinder. They're just being forced by the leader to just keep on going, and Putin could care less how many bodies it takes.
But things are getting worse in Russia. They are trying to mask it, to sugarcoat it, but things are really, really getting worse, including socially. Very many people, they really hate this war, but they are not allowed to express themselves. So even when they're doing all those surveys, you know, social surveys, they of course, most of them kind of express their support, but the economic situation is getting worse. The political situation, the level of freedom is pretty much non-existent, and I think that the tensions in the elites in Russia are growing to the extent that we can't imagine. So we can't say that he kind of he can allow as many people to die as possible without any consequences. He is facing consequences, and he's going. I think that there will be enormous changes in Russia, and hopefully the sooner the better. And and the Ukrainians are fighting for that
as well. This is something we want to emphasize. And this is the perspective that doesn't sound that much in the Western world. Ukraine is also fighting for the future of Russia, for the future of Belarus. Absolutely. Because only if Ukraine wins, and we want to reiterate, wins, the victory is needed, not peace, but the victory of Ukraine is necessary. Victory for us is, first of all, that Russia liberates all the territory of Ukraine. Status as of status 1991, when there was a referendum in all parts of Ukraine, including Crimea, and all the citizens of Ukraine have voted for independence of Ukraine.
And these are the internationally
recognized borders, and of course, the reparations is another important issue, because the damage that was caused to Ukraine is absolutely enormous. But anyway, it's something very important to reiterate is that Russia, in order to have a chance to reinvent itself, needs to lose this war. The Russian imperialism needs to die. The Russian ambition to be the older brother for the nations like Georgia, Ukraine, Lithuania, Armenia,
even Poland,
Poland, it has to die, because there is no reason for it. It's irrelevant. And it's still there. It's still part of the cultural code. It's not that we have clear solutions or suggestions. Of course, it's a very complicated process. And we read about how Germany have been going through, and other countries, not just Germany, but those who suffered from the fascist regimes were going through this. And that it took not one generation to really integrate the guilt and responsibility, and avoid what could we can call it the gaps or the blind spots or pitfalls, like with Germany, for example. Just something I want to also reiterate, that finally, maybe this in 2022, that in previous year, we saw some justice coming out to the surface in Germany in relation to their responsibility, not only in relation to Russians for the Second World War, but to Ukrainians, Belarusians, Georgians, and all other nations that have been fighting and losing even more people than Russians did. Ukrainians and Belarusians lost more population in the Second World War than Russians, but Russia has appropriated the damage and the victory
and the memory,
and the memory, and created the myth. And one of the reasons we believe Germany is so reluctant at the moment to support Ukraine is also
not anymore.
Not better and better.
This
there is a
paradigm
shift is happening, but in the very beginning, we can remember from what we began when the Ukrainian ambassador received from one of the German public officials a quote.
Why bother? You will be over in 3 days, kind of.
Yeah, just in the beginning of the war. So now it's shifting. So of course, Russia will need to go through processing, and I hope that here the international support will come, and maybe even Ukrainians will be of service in some time when we digest our own trauma in relation to what happened. But we believe it's a just war. Like there is justice in it, there is fairness in it. So speaking about, if you wish, that it's another part of the story, but speaking about the trauma, we also observe quite interesting phenomena. That in comparison to what is usually told about the traumatic experiences and PTSD to other wars, like for example what is described, what American soldiers experienced in Vietnam, in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other wars. In Ukraine, it's a totally different effect. When we see that the PTSD is much less. Like the effects are much
purpose and meaning.
Because there is purpose and meaning, and there is sense of justice.
The support of the society.
Exactly.
The support, the kind of the holding space of the whole society for those war veterans. And speaking, if you'll allow, speaking about Russia, there's one more important issue we need to consider, that there are more than 100 different small nations in that prison, which most of them, their cultural life is very limited. I mean, living in Russia, and some of them, they really seek some kind of autonomy or independence and dignity and respect, of course. So what we believe that the Ukraine winning will give some chance to all those nations, and there we come to a very kind of unspeakable kind of aspect of this war, that I think one of the greatest, what Russia is threatening the West with. There are two issues. One is nuclear attack, which is another topic. I believe it's really unlikely. And another one, Russia's disintegration, that you will, in the West, you will have to deal with all this great country falling apart, falling into pieces, and then you won't be able to manage it. So they're exploiting this narrative really seriously, both explicitly and implicitly. And I think that the Western political leadership is still not ready to accept that risk. But the thing is, I think that risk is there, and to a high degree, it's quite unavoidable. If the Russian kind of political regime falls apart, some processes will be happening, and I deeply believe that the Western countries, as partly awakened as they are now, not in a spiritual terms, but in political terms,
Sure.
they would be able to manage, and they will need to manage it, and that's something on the table. But that would create a lot of new possibilities for many small nations.
Well, also, one point first and then another one. It's like I've been watching Russian propaganda, translations, and they say we've got the most nuclear weapons and everything like that. What they never say is the other guys do too. And one British submarine could wipe out every major city in Russia. One little British submarine, not to mention what the US has and France and all that, just one sub. So it's like, yeah, you can, do this, but it would be suicide. And hopefully people would intervene if he ever got that crazy. But it's not just one-sided. Yeah, we got those things too. And that kept the war, mutually assured destruction, kept the relatively peace for a long time. And also with Russia, the future could be becoming a part of a united, peaceful Europe. Okay, if you look at the 20th century in Europe and the 19th century, 17th and 15th, on and on and on, it's been nothing but struggle and wars. And Europe has achieved this thing where France is not scared of Germany invading anymore. Spain is not afraid of France invading anymore. Holland's not afraid of the English coming in. Sweden is certainly not threatened by Spain. They just, okay.
Democracies usually don't fight.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, okay. So you guys could do that too. There's going to be a lot of work, and it's probably going to get worse there before it gets better. But
not in the same setup.
Yeah, and then still you like your German football team better than your French football team or whatever. But that's just how democracies and peoples play with one another and compete in a good way. And that is a possibility for Russia. It doesn't have to be just nothing. And I've been watching this YouTube show 1420. I don't know if you've heard about it, but this little Russian guy goes off in the streets all over and asks Russians questions. And as the Chinese philosopher said in The Art of War, know your enemy. And it's really tragic. It's changing over the course of the war. More people are saying no, but you also see a lot of people are scared to say anything. They just run off. And if you go out in the rural areas, they're just kind of these people from the Soviet era, and they remind me of people in America and I've known older people that just watch Fox News 8 hours a day, and they just think they're winning. NATO's invading Russia, the Nazis are coming, and they just yes, we got to defend Mother Russia. But a lot of young people don't buy it anymore, and they're starting to experience being called up and having friends die. And these are not happy people. There's very few that just go, Sieg Heil. And that's ironic, because the reason he invaded, the special military operation, was to get rid of the Nazis in Ukraine. And the irony was that every country has its Nazis, okay? You don't get to...
we are the Nazis.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we really have Nazis in the United States. So does Canada, so does England,
of course, and so does Ukraine. But they're such as they're invisible. They're literally.
What was really ironic is the biggest supporters of Putin in the United States are the Nazis.
Exactly.
So they change their story because all his supporters are going to wait a second. That's us, and we like you. And say, they came up with another reason, because it's the Russian philosophy is one leader, one church, one people, one. It's just basically Nazism with a Russian flavor, on it. So they're attacking the very thing that he is, and with his Gestapo, his secret police, his prisons. Squelching protest through torture, imprisonment, intimidation, death. More and more of the oligarchs, the people that have power in Russia, keep dying. A whole mess of them have died in really horrible ways. But just a coincidence, I'm sure, right? And eventually, it's just why any country wouldn't fight to death not to be a part of that system is amazing. And Ukraine has showed us that there it is.
there's a good joke that Zelensky likes to tell. It's coming from the Odessa Jewish culture. They have really great jokes, and two guys meet, and one is asking what is going on. So Russia is fighting NATO. So how are things on the front? So Russia is basically losing, and what about NATO? NATO didn't arrive yet.
True.
Yeah.
And amen to that, brother. So are you guys, where are you currently?
Currently, we are in Vilnius, in Lithuania, in my native town. We are traveling back and forth. We were in Kiev for Christmas and New Year, and the Orthodox Christmas, which was on the 7th of January. So basically, a good 2 weeks spent there. Of course, we got our share of missile attacks. We spent some hours in hiding in metro as a bomb shelter. I got cold. I was not dressed well enough. Just that was on the New Year's Eve, 31st of December. That was but generally the spirit is very strong in Kiev and in all. Basically, in all Ukraine, the people are consolidated. Everyone is busy. Everyone knows it's his or her purpose and meanings and what they're doing. So the whole energy and social dynamics is really like amazing.
And we are starting to plan our arrival back. Basically, we are here because of the youngest child that has, because of pandemic and then war, didn't have any chance to receive any primary education, basically. So we decided to dedicate this year to him so that he would get a chance to go to school, at least for 1 year. And then because of
to a good school, yes.
To a good school, yes. And then we are coming back a few times during spring, and then in summer we plan to go back forever.
So I heard, did your home get destroyed in Kiev, or was it your mother's? Somehow with your mom's house?
Yes, it's at the moment it's okay. We have our homes, my parents' home and our home. We have it. We have our stuff there. It's waiting for us.
Well,
So,
tell us what it's like. You know, you're in your house or you're someplace in Kiev, and you hear the alarms go off.
Yes, yes, the air raid
alarm.
siren.
And then everybody just heads to the undergrounds, or where?
So usually it depends, you know. Usually always a good idea is to go hiding in the bomb shelter. So almost every kind of apartment building has its own
bomb shelter.
Bomb shelter is in the basement. But in Kiev, it's pretty easy. If you live close to metro, to the underground, then you go into those stations, and many people gather there and basically spend time. So
you feel the vibrations as the rockets hit. It's like,
so can you imagine that sometimes you hear the explosions of the rockets themselves, although the anti-missile kind of defense is very strong in Ukraine. Their hit ratio is above 80%, like around 85%, I think. So they're doing amazing job. I think they're doing better job than those engineers who built those systems. They planned that. Actually, they're exceeding all the expectations. Nevertheless, some rockets still hit. So if you hear that in the distance of a few miles, then the whole world basically just goes shaking. So on the 31st of December, when we were hiding in the metro, we were not going down the stairs in the depth. We were basically like few few levels down, and we're at the entrance into the metro, but it was underground. So some anti-missile defense hit the rocket and it exploded somewhere above. We didn't see it, of course, but can you imagine, there were like bank machines, the ATMs, and they were shaking in the underground. So the feeling is, I can tell that all the bravado evaporates instantly. Like you really start feeling the danger with all fibers of your body.
But then people usually bring chairs and computers and chat
tea and
coffee, and it becomes normal life. Like people are doing their best in order to not just survive, but to continue to live. And this is something very interesting, I believe. In Ukraine, you understand that life is fragile, and you start to appreciate it more than anywhere. And this is something we very deeply feel when we cross the border. Since we do it quite often, we have recognized this special vibe that you start to feel when you are moving on the Ukrainian territory. And by the way, just to maybe say a few words to our to your fellow friends, partners, and those who will listen to us. We are planning to have an event in autumn, possibly in the beginning of October, together with our fellow friends from Emerge community. And we actually would like the foreigners, our friends from all over the world, to let them experience this vibe. Of course, there will be a lot of care for safety, and we're already starting to speak about it. But we decided that we do not want to expect the end of the war. We cannot plan. Like there is no clarity about what's going to be in 6 months or so. But this vibe and this touch with reality is very, very special.
Yeah.
And we think that in Ukraine, it's not from only military or political perspective, but many other perspectives, social, in terms of interaction between people, many things are emerging, and something that you just cannot feel in other places. So we want to invite our fellow colleagues from all over the world to join this event, and it will be published very soon at the Emerge website, and there will be announcements.
Yeah, it's going to happen in the beginning of October.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, God willing, I'm certainly planning to be there. So it would be it would be an incredible journey.
We're looking forward to it.
And I'm
You
just
know-
looking at you guys, the energy that's coming off you, your country's being invaded, you've been where the rockets are falling, and there's so much light and courage and beauty and faith just coming through you, and not just angry, traumatized. And I'm sure you got a bunch of anger, but what's coming through you is truly amazing, and it's very admirable and noble. And I'll just want to say one thing that distinguishes Ukraine's fight against Russia is Russia purposely goes after civilian targets in order to make the pain worse. Ukraine fights the army, goes after military targets. It's just like there's no equality of anything there.
Exactly, it's a disproportion of arms, and Russia can shoot rockets for thousands of kilometers, and the Ukrainians have about, I don't know, now those HIMARS are fighting up to 80 or even 70 or something. Now the new ones. Kilometers, yeah. So the new ones should arrive, which would fight like about 150, 160, which is 100 miles. So basically, of course, with this disproportion of technical possibilities, Ukrainians are doing really amazing job. It's absolutely fantastic.
And we also have to admit that the losses are very significant, and we're losing the best of our men. And every day we're receiving very bad news.
Yes, there are terrible losses, and of course, no joy, no happiness. But the spirit that we're speaking about, and I think that you reflected on, is really coming from the belief that Ukraine is coming through a rebirth finally, and through liberation of the history of, I don't know, 400, 500 years and plus, and the whole world is changing, because this world is changing the macro systems, and meta systems, and if you want to understand how the system is changing, you need to come to the frontier of it. So that's one of the ideas of this Emerge gathering in autumn, that you need to really come with
embodied experience,
with all the embodied experience, and experience what is happening there, and reflect on the world changes from there, from the frontier of the Western civilization.
Yeah, to me, it would be I don't know what the words are, a holy pilgrimage.
Yes, that's the way we put it. By the way,
that's the way we plan it, because people would need to gather in one point in Poland, because the logistics to Poland is good and the best routes are to Poland. So then we thought that the first stage would be from Poland to Lviv, which is very beautiful Western Ukrainian city, and spend a couple of days there, and then continuing pilgrimage to go from Lviv to Kiev, and do the main kind of days of event there, and
visit St. Sophia Cathedral, and maybe have some events there.
Some of the most important places, including spiritual places, and maybe do some of course some cultural activities, maybe some social activities, and then pilgrimage back to Poland, and then everyone goes home. So it would not be like you come, you check into your hotel, you register for the conference, sit at your chair, and then go back, taxi, airport, shuttle. That's it. Not that kind of.
It's going to be a spiritual journey.
Absolutely. And I'm sure when you're just driving from Lithuania to Kyiv, you see the war, you see the Russian tanks and all these armored vehicles and all this stuff. It's just must be an incredible, powerful experience.
It is shocking, and it is awakening at the same time. It becomes real.
Something we are also planning to do with our guests in autumn. We wish to show different angles of Ukraine, the diversity. And definitely the guests will be able to see the damage, and basically to have this embodied experience of what is it, the Russian invasion? What are those Russian tanks that going on you and shooting into your houses? They will have this experience of touching it and looking at it. And also maybe doing something together, like we're still not sure what it's going to be, but maybe contributing in some way. I mean, we want to use hands. We would not only we want some intellectual thought to as usual come up and circulate, but also we want all our bodies to be involved, and to get this feel of what democracy, freedom, and dignity smell like.
But we just an important disclaimer: we don't want our guests to go to the front line. Of course, we will take maximum care of their safety, and it's pretty safe in Kiev. It's nothing to worry about. I mean, I mean, of course, there are always risks, but we would do everything to minimize them.
If we follow procedures, we know that after the air alert, like after the sirens, we just need to go to the basement or to the metro. And if we follow the protocols, there's not really no problem with safety.
Yes, and we are going to make the main event in the conference hall, which is in the basement, which is by itself a bomb shelter. So it should be interesting.
Well, I know death is unavoidable, but I could think of worse ways to die than dying with a bunch of heroes, you know? I gotta go, God, that's not bad. And I'm not suicidal and all, but you know, there's worse ways to go, you know?
We hope that everybody will be safe.
You know, and I'm a U.S. Army veteran, and you know, I have my little veteran hat with the American flag. I just imagine myself saluting everybody I see and hugging them and crying. You're gonna have to like put me in a, you know, an armor paint or something. It's I just feel so much admiration. If I were younger, I'm sure I would have joined the International Brigade and tried to contribute that way, but it just caught me at the time when it's not my time to do that anymore. So
of course, but you are contributing in so many ways, yes. John. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, we talked about, will this be a good time to play the song?
Absolutely, because this is one of the greatest contribution, I believe, that you're making.
Okay, let me say a little about it. I was struggling with this, and I'd written songs years ago, and I don't remember how to write a song, and worked on it, prayed about it. The chorus started coming out, and the chorus is something you can just sing and shout and just get it out. And then the chord pattern and the verses just started coming. It's like it was just, and then there's the last coda where it kind of changes, and in the end it gets to this just repeated the chorus. And it was me, my voice, and my wife, because Heidi, our producer here, said there's no feminine voices in here. So Pam went down and we recorded it, and so it has a feminine voice. And then at the end you have me just crying out over the choruses and trying to say, I can't be there, I can't fight, but God help me to put my heart and soul into this. So it may do some good. So it's on Apple Music, CD Baby, and Spotify. So take it. If you want to use it for anything, to raise money for support, please use it as medicine to help this country and our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. So I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do this. Vanessa, are you ready on your end? Anyway, okay. Ukraine, 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 come on and shout it. Ukraine. Didn't you get the memo? Didn't you get the news? Putin says he's doing it for Jesus. He says you're bound to lose. Ukraine, 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 come on and shout it. Ukraine. They killed your men, women, and children, buried them in shallow ditches. Be reasonable, they say. You should talk with these sons of bitches.
strength of 10. Why don't you bend your knees and surrender? Act like ordinary men. Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. Come on and shout it. Ukraine. Democracy, really? Why don't you give it a rest? Dump this so-called servant of the people. Emperor Putin surely knows what's best for Ukraine. 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 Come on and shout it. Ukraine. Under the colors of blue and gold grows a story that won't get old. Why didn't you just run away? Why did you choose to fight and stay? For Ukraine! Ukraine! Yeah! Ukraine! Come on and shout it! Ukraine! Ukraine! Say it loud! Ukraine! Come on and shout it! Ukraine! 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 Come on and shout it! Ukraine! 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 Come on and shout it! Ukraine!
Bravo.
There it is, brothers and sisters.
Beautiful, beautiful, delightful.
Yeah.
I wanted to go into my heavy metal mode.
Yeah, that was me playing lead guitar too, by the way.
Wonderful.
I was able to
Wonderful.
put my stuff
We are
through. So,
so
look, is there any ways, let's see, that where people can help, organizations where we can send money, or what you recommend, and then we can, we can put it out there, and how to get involved, on our end.
Yeah, we can probably recommend a couple of the most reliable charities in Ukraine. We may send you the links so you can put it in the description. And they are absolutely reliable, and they have wonderful teams of people who are really thinking through every detail where to put money best, and we are not trying to duplicate all these efforts. We just trust them and support them as well.
And there's always United 24.
United 24.
Remember that this is an initiative coming from Zelensky and supported by many world renowned experts, including Timothy Snyder, who has raised a lot of money with his lectures about modern Ukraine. That we actually highly recommend. Something truly, truly important to listen to know the context. So we will be very happy to help with the details.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else, Vitas, that you need to say?
Yes, I think our big request to all the listeners is we cannot allow the Ukraine fatigue. Please help us with supporting Ukraine in its spirit, in its fight. Just be as active as possible. If you wish to come to Ukraine, please be aware that you're always welcome, and you have people who could be the anchors, someone who would always support and advise and do whatever is possible for your safety and well-being. Just be very conscious that the battle is still going on. It's
Yes.
in a very, very hot phase. The victory is not yet tangible, although there are things that are already acknowledged, like Ukraine's agency is already acknowledged. Finally, we have the status of the country that has a voice. And we hope that no negotiations will be held without Ukraine. And we are kind of reassured that most probably it will be like that.
Yeah. And from my side, for the final notes, I would probably want to say that to the addressing the broader audience of the Americans, probably it's not exactly the audience of your podcast, but the broader audience. On the one hand, we are enormously grateful for the support of the USA, which is the main kind of the backbone of support, you know. And I want to say that this war is not far from you, because we sometimes hear those echoes that, oh, it's far, it doesn't bother us, it's not related to us. It is not far. It is not far, because you can't imagine what would happen to the whole world system and setup if Putin wins. And it would become such a big problem for every single American. So the Europeans have already woken up to this truth. They already understand that Putin would never stop. He would go further west and he would expand this war. But even for the Americans and even for the Asians, there's of course this China-Taiwan tension. I don't want to go in there, but it also depends on the Ukrainian scenario. But even for the Americans, it is not far from you. It is. So we are deeply, deeply grateful for all your support.
Yeah, and don't get cynical. If we fall into cynicism, Putin wins, you know? So keep your mind and your heart open, even if it's painful, you know? So what? Keep going. Oh.
Yeah, and if you want to try out your courage, just come to Ukraine and enjoy wonderful restaurants that are open, theaters, Ukrainian speaking, English speaking, wonderful communities, bars.
A lot of volunteering initiatives where you can just join, and a lot of creative spaces, a lot of space for creativity generally.
Yeah.
Well,
please come.
Brilliant, you guys. Thank you so much. It's so good to see you again. And anyway, I love you, and it's such an honor to talk with you. And thank you for your heroic struggle and all that you've been doing. And maybe sometime in better times we could come back and you could talk more about the psychology, the issues that you've learned through going through this. And you already mentioned a bit that when you have meaning and purpose in a community, it ain't nearly as bad as when you don't. And what you're learning about leadership, I mean, this would be it's a very important issue for me. That would be extraordinary. So let's keep that in the future.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for all your support.
All the feelings are very mutual. Thank you. Thank you, John. We love you.
Bye.